Today I'm going to attempt to lay out kitchen cabinets for this wall. I'm going to just use the in-stock kitchen cabinets that they have at the local home improvement place. That way I can just buy them one day, bring them home here and install them without special ordering anything, and they're pretty budget friendly as far as cabinets are concerned. So we'll start out with the sink base. The sink base goes right here where these fixtures are. This is the hot and cold line for the faucet and the drain. The consideration for the sink base is that we want it centered in the middle of the window. That's pleasing to the eye. So I'll start by measuring the windowsill and find out how big the window is. It's 71 inches, so that is 35 1/2 by my calculations. So we'll make a mark at 35 1/2. And that's the center of the sink base. Sink bases are typically 36 inches wide. So to lay out the edges of the sink base, I will measure half of 36, which is 18, in each direction from my middle point of the sill. So I have one here and here. So I'll transfer those lines down to the wall, and I now have marks where my sink base will go. After we've laid out where the sink base goes, let's think about what should go next to it. Base cabinets come in basically 3 different widths: 12 inches, 18 inches, 24 inches, and 36 inches, 4 different widths. I need the stove to go somewhere in this general area because that's where my gas service line is. So to figure out what goes next to the sink base, let's look at the options. A 12-inch cabinet would be right here. If we put the stove next to that, that means the stove would be underneath the windowsill, so that's no good. A 24-inch cabinet would bring it to right here, but then if we went the 30 inches, which is the width of the stove, that would only give about 10 inches or so up against the wall. So although a 24-inch cabinet would fit here between the sink base and the stove, when you look at where the stove would end up at 30 inches, that only leaves not even 12 inches between the stove and the wall, which is, if I could fit a narrow cabinet in there, I don't think it would be very good. It wouldn't look very balanced. So I'm going to go with an 18-inch cabinet, which ends up right here. And then when we look at where the stove ends up at 30 inches, which is right here, that leaves room for another 18-inch cabinet between the wall and the stove. I may need to move these plugs over to this other stud, but these need to be fixed anyway. This is not a very good or safe setup with everything exposed here on the side. I'll make it more professional looking anyway. So here's how it works out from the corner. We start with an 18-inch base cabinet from here to here. Then we go with the stove, which is 30 inches from here to here. Now this space is actually about 31.5 inches. So I will probably have to put a small filler strip between the wall and this first cabinet, because we want this opening to be just a shade over 30 inches so the stove will fit in but not have too much space on either side. After the stove, we have another 18-inch cabinet. This one's a DB. Do you know what DB stands for? Drawer base. Instead of just a cabinet with a single drawer and a door, this DB will have all drawers. I think it has 3 drawers. So that's a drawer base there, whereas this one's just a standard base cabinet with 1 drawer and a door. Next we have the 36-inch sink base. Now there's also a dishwasher in this kitchen. The dishwasher requires this valve right here for the water feed, so we'll put the dishwasher right next to the sink base. The dishwasher is 24 inches wide. I've marked out where the dishwasher goes, right here next to the sink base, 24 inches. And the last cabinet on this wall, between the dishwasher and the end of the counter, is going to be a 24-inch base. The reason I chose a 24-inch base is because that gives about 30 inches between the end of the window and the edge of that 24-inch base, which means that a 30-inch wall cabinet will fit very nicely above. And on the topic of wall cabinets, I'm going to have an 18-inch wide cabinet in the corner to correspond with the 18-inch wide base cabinet below. The stove is 30 inches wide, so I'm going to use a 30-inch cabinet above the stove. Standard wall cabinets are 30 inches high, but because we need the range hood above the stove, I'm going to use a shorter cabinet above the stove. I'm going to use an 18-inch cabinet above the stove with a hood underneath. So that's the consideration for wall cabinets. You want to put a 30-inch short cabinet above the stove so you can put your hood there, and then next to it the same width cabinet as the base is in this application. And we already have a 30-inch wall cabinet planned out here, so I think that will be a good layout for this wall. Again, things to remember. Center the sink base below the window if you have a window. Take into consideration mechanical hookups for the stove and dishwasher. Example, put the stove in front of the gas hookups. Don't decide to put the stove way over there or somewhere where there's no gas hookups or electric hookups. The same with the dishwasher. Keep it close to the sink base so you don't have to run long lines from the valve over to the dishwasher. Also, it makes sense to have the dishwasher close to the sink so you can rinse a dish and throw it right in the dishwasher. Let's talk about general heights of cabinets in a kitchen. The base cabinets are 34.5 inches tall. When you add a countertop on top of that, you come out with a finished countertop of 36 inches. Above that, we have 18 inches of space for the backsplash, which brings us to 54 inches. 54 inches is the bottom of the standard wall cabinets. If you go up to 66 inches, that is the bottom of the short cabinet that we use above the stove. That allows 30 inches of space between the stove and the hood, which is what's recommended in this application. 18 inches above that is the top of all the cabinets, 84 inches.